And a robotic process automation replaces a human. So if a human being today, many of you, I'm sure, are aware of auditing. So we need a balance confirmation from a bank, for example. And if a client is seeking a balance confirmation, typically a human will go to a system, enter the account number for the client, find out what the balance is, confirm it with something, put it in a letter template, and send it off to client. This is what the process is. Just imagine now a macro or a software program that we call as a robo has an identity, has a login ID, has a password, is approved by risk as somebody who can enter the system on the organization's behalf, is trained, is given rules as to you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and that's all it is. But it is so powerful that when you are able to define rules to the nth level that a machine can follow, you can actually eliminate a human being. And the more I am experiencing this and the more products that are coming in the market and the more advanced it is getting, it is becoming a reality that today it is, I will say, it is a little primitive stage. The robos have its own limitations because it's a new concept and everybody has to really understand, be creative to design the process, redesign the process a little bit for the robo or the machine to understand how to operate. But it is progressing and it is something that will become a reality. In BNY Mellon India's case, I'll tell you ANZ Grindlays in Bangalore are one of the pioneers in this. And about a year back, one of our employees, we have this innovation program in the organization, which I'm sure everybody of you have. And robotics process automation was given as an idea to implement in BNY Mellon globally 2 years back, 3 years back actually. The first year it got shot down because nobody believed that we have reached a time where we can actually do it. So we let 12 months go and we put the idea again in the global program. And this time it got from here, right. The robotics idea went from Pune for the global BNY Mellon. That lead from the east is my new mantra. And I believe we can do that now. We can bring in true innovative transformational ideas from here that can change the world. And this was one of that. The first year it failed globally. The second year wasn't even selected. The second year was selected and got sponsorship. And we are at a point where, automation anywhere, Blue Prism, UiPath are some of the names that they have been researching on robotics process automation for the last 15 years or so. They have a product that is famous in the market. We evaluated that. Change management is a big thing in robotics, is because if a process changes, you have to be able to go back and train the bot all over again so that it can then perform what you want that bot to do. All that happened, it's a early, right now as I'm speaking, a global team is in our office in Pune, and we have a 2-month effort going on now to really explore opportunity in every process that we do and see if a bot can be implemented. And that is something we are doing. I just want to, table one more thought. But robotics in itself is not enough. We all know this. Machine learning, cognitive technology, what they talk about, OCR or ICR, which is optical character reader or intelligent character reader. We have to think of all this together to bring about any true transformational change, because robotics has limitation. Unless it is rule-based, it can't do much. Machine learning, though, is intelligent, can process data, can understand what is required, can take decisions, and can execute that for you. Cognitive technology, the little I understand, I'm not a technology person. If I'm not making sense, please somebody correct me. But a voice query can be converted to a data that can go into big data for interpreting what the query is about. The text then finds out an answer that is converted back to voice, and the answer is given to whoever is raising the query. When we are looking at any true transformation, I believe we have to look at it as a holistic approach, not just one of that. Anyone is not going to give us a complete answer, so it has to be how can we match these 3, 4 that we know today and make best of that. The last point, and then I'll stop, is this whole question of what is this going to be in the future. You know, the little I read, they say that 60% of jobs that are today in existence in this industry will go away, and a machine will do that. Now, is it going to be reality? If 60% indeed happens, that means 60% of the human population is going to lose their jobs. And so there is this bit of whether to embrace or to resist is a big discussion that is going on. There are a set of people who don't believe, forget about, you know, whether to embrace or resist, whether it is going to be a reality or not. I believe it is going to be a reality. It will take a little while, but a driverless car, which nobody thought could happen, is now happening. There was unfortunately an accident with Tesla. But it is going to make progress. Google Maps won't work in Pune. I used to think that because we have so gullible, you know, here and there. We have Google Maps here. We will have a driverless car in India as well at someday, for sure. Robotics, machine learning, artificial intelligence is definitely going to happen. My view is we should embrace it. One, we don't have a choice, because those who don't do it only will fall behind. But I believe one door that closes because of an automation coming in, 3 more doors of opportunity open, and the skill set that is required for those new jobs, as long as people are able to change themselves, upskill, jobs are always there. They won't stop, really. But falling behind where the world is going is not an option, so embrace is what my vote is, and that's what we are doing. So with that, I'll stop and open up for audience questions. That is what we intend to do now. Thank you.
And that is to our Sherlock Holmes. And so, you know, Dinesh mentioned about Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere and that other product. You know, how does that compare with what you are doing or other products in the market, IBM or whatever? So, you know, if you can just throw some light on that.
So if you look at the market in AI space, like I said, you can segment different categories, right? The RPA, which they've mentioned, is robotic process automation. That's the first level, where, like he said, it's fundamentally rule-based. So it's more like, it's somewhere like a, I would say a smart device or a smart program, right? Which can replicate and which can automate a lot of tasks which otherwise would have required human intervention, right? So like examples which he gave, it's a macro on steroids, right? That's what he mentioned, right? So it's pretty much that. And that's a low-hanging fruit. That's a quick one which you can get, because a lot of things which people do are read from here, read from there, enter into there, you know, pull data from here. That's all rule-based. It's pretty much this thing. The second category is, which also he mentioned, is the cognitive, where there's an element of learning involved, where there's an element of analyzing and response. So you will not have a definitive response. It's a probabilistic response, right? You get an input, it is 90% it could be this, 60% it could be this, 40% it could be this, right? There's no definitive answers. There's a cognition being applied. There's a knowledge base being leveraged, right, to navigate through, and it is achieving a certain goal, right? So the objective is, here's an input, here's a goal, decide what to do in between. That's cognitive. So there are a lot of application in that space. The third one is more autonomous, right, which is the third level of intelligence, which there's not too many products, which there are products. We have also invested in one company which plays in that space. But that's, I would say, is primarily in an experimentation research stage as of today. But you'll see that coming into the market as well in the next 5 years. So I would put these into the categories. The products which he mentioned, the Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere, primarily are in the RPA space. The Watsons and the Holmes are primarily targeting the cognitive space. That's where the differentiation is.
But recently, Mr. Mohandas Pai came up with a big statement that the disruptor will be the first disrupted, means the IT guys. And we are talking about disrupting the business as a whole, but we will not also be ring-fenced. We are also be affected. So what sort of areas where IT operations will be taken over by artificial intelligence or robotics, apart from business benefits by warehouse managements or manufacturing? That's one area. Another area, what is the scope of artificial intelligence in the information security world or the machine learning to cope up with very future-ready information security product? If you can highlight, then it will be, because we are all compliance and security professionals over here. That's my question.
So if I understand your first question is what kind of areas would be amenable from a AI perspective, right? I would say the first and the foremost is knowledge workers, right? If you look at the knowledge worker space, it's a huge market, all right? It's a huge market. And knowledge worker is everything that he described, banks, insurance, a lot of, the entire BPO is knowledge worker space. And there's so many others, even audit. There's a lot of knowledge work which goes in on audit. The biggest bang for the buck, the biggest impact, the kind of impact which I explained earlier, I think you will feel in the knowledge worker space, right? Then there is confluence of technologies. You heard the IoT session in the earlier session, right? The convergence of sensors, the convergence of the physical, the conventional robotics, right? Which will affect the examples which you gave in terms of warehouse management in case of retail store. For example, in a retail store today, using AI, which is primarily based on visual computing, right? The ability to analyze, bring AI into what you capture on a camera, can bring in analytics to the same extent into an in-store experience as you do it in an online. In an online, you know every click that the customer did, what he visited and what he didn't buy, right? In retail stores, today you can't. You don't know where the customer, all you know is footfall in and what he purchased. But using AI techniques, you can do that. You can do stock outs, you can do thrift management, a lot of warehouse management, the entire automated, no lights, no AC kind of warehouse management, right? So a confluence of these technologies will impact the other areas. But to me, the lowest hanging fruit, the first one which will impact, the 60% which he mentioned, I think you'll feel the impact in the knowledge worker space. I forgot the second question, to be honest.
So I agree with what Mr. Sanjeev is saying. I think that when you go forward, you see what I call the rule of 10, by which I mean you may have, let's say, 50 people who are the ones who are creating the core algorithm. Maybe 10 times that, 500 people who are sort of turning these algorithms into something that people can use. 5,000 people creating programs and 50,000 people popularizing them, and maybe 500,000 people at the last stage who are doing the customer facing, so to speak. So I think that the scope for knowledge workers is always going to be there. It's just that the nature of their activities will change. There's already a lot of AI in the automotive world. All your diagnostics, all your alerts that, you know, rotate your tires in 2,000 kilometers, pressure in the left rear tire is low, all these kind of brake linings are getting worn out. These are all very, very simple examples of AI already. I just want to make one last point, which I think people often lose sight. People think about the Industrial Revolution and the first stage of robotics, where a lot of manual workers were displaced. And they had a lot of difficulty being absorbed into the new jobs that were being created. And people think that similar things will happen with the wave of knowledge workers. I don't think so. The reason is because people who are being displaced now, or who will be displaced in the next 10, 20 years are not manual workers. They are using their brain now, already in what they are doing. All they need is a different set of skills. So retooling these people to take up the new jobs that are going to be created is going to be a whole lot easier than to take the displaced factory manual workers of 30, 40, 50 years ago and teaching them to take the new job. So I think we need not fear automation. This is the point I wanted to make. You wanted to say something?
Hello, this is Avinash from TCS. Sorry, Sandeep, I took your turn. I have a couple of questions. One is, in any bank, this especially for Dinesh, large bank, there is a risk management function. And especially risk like anti-money laundering and so on. There is an army of risk analysts who do the case management and risk mitigation as well as risk investigation work. So is there an opportunity where one can capture patterns and use pattern recognition type of technologies to automate the work which is being done by these analysts and thereby, bringing more objectivity, accuracy and cost effectiveness in that function?
Hello, is it working? Yeah. So there are two ways to look at it. One, you mentioned risk professionals. They have one job, first of all, to approve that whatever we propose as an automation idea for robotics, they approve that. So any change that goes through in our organization has to be approved by risk professionals to say that the rules that a human follows are you training the bot effectively to follow the same set of rules? So that's one role that risk professionals have to play. But to your question, take an example of a fraud detection or information risk, which is a big topic today. The algorithms that, for example, in machine learning that can be built and their ability to look at unstructured data that can form a conclusion about the possibility of somebody making a mistake or a fraud happening is huge. And so where we can put in human controls, in our case, every transaction that is processed, it's a 4-eye principle. Two eyes work on it and 2 eyes check it. It's because the transactions can be in millions of dollars and you don't want to process a wrong transaction by pressing one button extra or less. And that is how we have been controlling. But the risk, that is our risk mitigation, that is how we do. But if a machine is doing the processing, and if we can think of a machine now to also check and bring in artificial controls in place, I think it will be great. The accuracy can be beyond 100%, the true Six Sigma, and it is certainly possible.
So I'll give you also add on to, so if you look at in the AML fraud space, you can visualize two areas. One is where you generate the suspicious transaction or the potential fraud. So there is AI. Today, most of the engines are very sophisticated, but they are fundamentally rule-based. They're fairly static. The rules have to be changed. It is not something that it picks it up online. So AI can be a stent, right? You do the normal processing, but you do it pattern-based, like you rightly said, which can be more one-to-one and dynamic. The rules can be dynamic, and thereby reduce your false positives, which is a big saving. The second, but that's extremely complex. Let's not underestimate that, because billions of dollars of investment have gone into those high-speed engines, right? You're speaking of decision in milliseconds. But the second area is the remediation part of it. Fair enough, you generate whatever positive, false positives and false negatives, right? Your real fraud to suspicious frauds which you generate is probably 1:100, right? And you have to remediate. That is much easier. Your cost for remediation can be brought down by using the same principles which I said, like he said, scan reports or whatever it is and then say yes or no. So two areas where it can, so it's a big area. It's a complex area.
So thank you very much for some great basic discussion. My question is not so much technical, really. Uh, if you look around, some of the things that were discussed on the panel have been positioned by multiple service providers. You know, presenting the same idea, probably using different words, right? So, uh, a lot of them also, maybe because of market reasons, also talk about this as a unique positioning or a unique solution in terms of automation, in terms of robotics, in terms of AI. Now, I'm just thinking aloud. I'm not making a comment or, you know, or trying to play the devil's advocate here. The thing is that if everybody is doing the same thing, where is the differentiation coming in? Like once Dilbert was asked a question, you know, the auditor said, are you following best practices? Why are you not following best practices? To that, Dilbert said that if everybody is following best practices, is it not the same as mediocre? So in the same way, where do you see service providers bringing in differentiation? And where do you see consumers bringing in or demanding differentiation? Because finally in the marketplace, a lot of time differentiation is what gives a head start.
Well, I think here is an answer. It sounds like a joke, but it's not actually. What people like us are trying to do, suppose you're a tennis player, and then I tell you, I'm building a better tennis racket than that person. And you come and ask me, what if everybody in the world buys your tennis rackets? Then I'll say, then the best tennis player will win, right? So in other words, it's not that using our product is a substitute for our customers to apply their brains and try to do things in an intelligent fashion. We are facilitating, but we're not supplanting the need to for the customers to optimize their processes. That's why I